Hey guys, this is Louie. I'm an addict. For those of you, who have been with me for a while, you know a lot of this stuff already. It's kind of the introduction / housekeeping part. I used a lot of different drugs for about 17 years. The ones that I had a problem with were weed and alcohol and cocaine. I got clean about 4 years ago, and I started making a series of recordings and putting them out there as podcasts. The purpose of that being to potentially help other people who are starting the journey, or maybe folks who have already achieved their sobriety who are in the maintenance phase. Or final subset of folks that it may help would be the normies, who don't really understand our behavior just because, they're capable of having a single beer or smoking a single bowl, or whatever the case may be. If you find this insightful or helpful, please take a moment to share it with others. Right now I think this is up on iTunes, Spotify, as well as YouTube. If you're looking at this on iTunes, take a moment and, provide a rating and a review. My understanding is that'll help this to get out there to more people. If you're looking at YouTube, comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. So today I've got a special guest who is magnanimous enough with his time to give me a second shot at this after I deleted the first interview that we did. I'm sure to have my computer plugged in and charging today. But I'll introduce Paul to you. Paul, thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, Paul was generous enough to join us today and tell his story. Where do you want to start out?
At the beginning, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, right? Like the moment we're born, maybe?
I'll just go on back in time, and if you can keep me focused with questions, that would probably help, because I can get a little off track.
Yeah, fire away, man.
But I'm definitely, I like to say that on paper, I had every advantage that you could want. No sign of addiction or drug addiction. Middle class, white guy, wealthy parents. Never got beat up or touched by adults inappropriately. Always taken to the doctor when I was sick. Food, clothes, never went hungry. Mm-hmm. I had every advantage somebody could want growing up. Maybe I had sort of pushover parents, too liberal and loose. He can do whatever he wants. No boundary types.
Okay.
And I would, I could concede that might be a contributing factor to a lot of my story here. But that doesn't change anything about me ultimately being responsible for my life and my choices, even if a lot of them were made in the ignorance of childhood.
Oh, you mean accountability is important?
Yeah, I've heard you harp on that once or twice. Yeah, that's actually, when you get right down to it, if you could take one thing away from anybody in recovery, or the one thing that I think can really make the difference in the long run, is realizing that you're responsible for your own actions. You've dug the hole that you're living in.
Yeah.
And you're the one who's going to have to climb out, and nobody else is going to do it for you. And nobody else put you down there. You're the one who made it. That's a pretty important psychic shift for me that probably happened before I got sober, but was the lead to actually changing my life.
I don't know if you guys can hear that. That is my 85-pound black lab making as much noise as humanly possible. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sure he just wants to be part of the podcast.
He does.
So I got high for the first time in 6th grade, or I didn't get high, I smoked pot for the first time in 6th grade. It was real stupid drama situation where a friend of mine sort of proposed, hey, let's go, do you want to get a bag of weed together? And I was like super excited, yeah, let's do that. And then this douchebag went and told his parents that I wanted to get weed. And then my parents confronted me about it.
So did he get caught with the bag of weed?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Threw it on you, or
no? Maybe that happened behind the scenes and I didn't know. But as my perception of the situation was, he came to me and was like, hey, this dude, he can get us weed. I was like, yeah, I know that guy. Let's get some. Let's do it. And then a few days later, he went and told his parents that I wanted to get high, and he was worried about me. This was not a quality guy.
No,
that was living in my neighborhood, but he was one of the neighborhood kids.
What a scumbag!
Yeah, he. There's funny stories about him, but I suppose I can't tell those because, for all I know, he might be out there listening and wanting to get sober himself. If I have no idea what that guy's doing, just one of the neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
Anyway, So I remember my parents confronted me about that because they got the call from his parents, and I straight up lied. Of course not. I would never. No. He said that? No, it was his idea. He wanted to do that. He asked me, and I said no. I lied.
Oh, okay.
I lied.
Okay.
I lied straight up because I didn't want to be drawn in. I figured he had some shame or something. He was easier to throw that on other people, but I threw it right back at him when my parents came to me. I probably, in sixth grade, I probably got high, or I smoked once or twice, but it wasn't until the summer between 7th and 8th grade that I actually got high for the first time. There's obviously some interest there, though, some enthusiasm. What other people might have been like, oh, no, you're not supposed to do drugs. I was excited. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. I was very curious. So that first time I got high, somewhere between 7th and 8th grade, where I actually got high, it was like, I could mark that as one of the most important moments in my life. Because it just fundamentally changed everything about me. It was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm here for. This is what life is really supposed to be. I just really, really liked it. Laughing until I was passing out sort of thing. And after that, I was hooked. But, I was still only going into 8th grade. I didn't really know how to get weed. This is a friend who'd gotten to high school a couple of years earlier who came back to share what he'd gotten into weed, so he turned us onto it.
Right.
Because we'd all been friends growing up. So I didn't really have any regular access, but every time the opportunity presented itself after that, I started taking it, or started gradually going on that path. And I was always trying to keep it secret. I knew it was sort of the wrong thing to do. I knew my parents would be upset if they found out, and I didn't know how my friends would think about me, or which friends would be okay with it and would want to get high with me, and which friends would be really worried about me because I was getting high.
Or maybe even involve the parents, I imagine that.
Or tell my parents, yeah. Who's going to put word back to my parents, especially after having this experience
right.
in 6th grade. It's like, well, then nobody's trustworthy.
Right.
So, it gradually became a regular part of my life there. I would say by sophomore year of high school, that's when it really started to escalate from when it just sort of, the opportunity arose to every weekend, and then sneaking out of the house in the middle of the week.
So it went from being an opportunistic thing to creating opportunities?
Pretty much, okay. Yeah. Because, anybody who's been through an American public school knows it's pretty fucking easy to get your hands on some weed. And so it became, by the summer between sophomore and junior year, I remember my parents left for Spain for a couple weeks, and I was supposed to stay with friends, and I did that, but we knew my house was empty, so we spent the first week just smoking in there nonstop. And then after that, it was all day, every day. I was a full-blown pothead at that point, that summer, And I remember I dodged getting into trouble for that. My parents said the house smelled funny, but I never got in any trouble.
Probably smelled like air fresheners and stuff.
Yeah, it must have smelled it, yeah. And we had left some cigars hidden, so I think they just assumed that that's what we were doing. But really, we've been emptying out the cigars to roll blunts. A little camouflage there. Anyway, but I didn't get in trouble. I think I didn't get caught up, just the point. So I felt like I could just keep on going. I could keep on smoking. And I remember when the beginning of junior year came around, thinking about, I'll stop when the school year starts, and get back. So I was in AP classes, I was in honor band. It was by a lot of, I guess, on paper, like I said, doing all the right things on the college track and that sort of thing. But then, the first week of school comes around, and I was slowed down at all. I'm smoking every night.
Let me interject and ask you a question here. So, remember how you were talking about 7th and 8th grade? That's when it kind of started. And you did it, and you felt like, oh, this is the thing. How did I kind of live without this? Is the way I interpreted it.
Yeah.
What do you think? What made it that type of an experience?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have no idea. Right? What makes one person? Because there was other kids from the neighborhood running around that had the opportunity to get high. And did get high. And didn't have this immediate love affair with it.
It was life-changing.
It was life-altering.
You know what I mean?
I felt like I had found my purpose in life. And that would get reinforced later on as I started to realize I'm addicted to this. But it's That's what I'm supposed to do. That's I am a drug addict. I'm supposed to be getting high. And, but yeah, whether it's genetic or the fact that I was, couldn't really talk about it with my parents or couldn't get an objective view on it, right? Because if you like something and you don't want to stop doing it, you'll hang only around people that reinforce that notion that it's a good thing to do, and you won't ever get like a broader, bigger picture of it.
It's almost like rationalization in the form of only spending time with people who agree with your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Definitely like a sort of confirmation bias, I think. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But yeah, whether it's genetic or something about just sort of the boundarylessness that that was their parenting style, was just he'll figure it out. Except for school. School was always very important. I got like disciplined when I didn't, or scolded. That was my mom's way of doing stuff. My dad was pretty hands off. When I didn't keep my grades up, or I had bad report cards. So like that was the one thing. That's what I learned really, and that's how I kept it going as long as I did. So I knew if I kept my grades up, then my parents wouldn't bother me. I could sneak out of the house. I could stay out all hours. I could run around and do drugs. And as long as I kept my grades up, they wouldn't really probe too deeply into my life, and I could keep getting away with it. Which is basically what I did through the junior year of high school, the first semester of junior year of high school. That was because I started like a lot of my friends started being the people that were getting high, and kind of had like a foot in both worlds. There's straight edger, straight edge, like, let me just call them the college track crowd. Right. And like some of those people were using drugs too. But then there's the other people that really were like, fuck school, let's just go get high. And I was hanging out with both crowds, right. And kind of splitting myself between the two, which I managed to keep doing. And I felt like, I just felt like I was fine, happy with my life, smoking all the time, keeping my grades up. I was dropping acid sometimes, experimenting with just different drugs and staying out all night, having fun, which kept on going until right around Christmas time, when a friend's girlfriend called my parents and told them that I was the biggest pothead at my school, which was bullshit. Plenty bigger potheads than me, because I was still going to class on a regular basis.
Right.
I wasn't skipping class yet. But yeah, I think she was just jealous or pissed that her boyfriend and I would just get high, and we're like, yeah, I'm sure their relationship was mostly based on him just hooking up with her. I'm sure. I don't know. I wasn't. But anyway, my parents got wise, and so they called me home and confronted me about it. And then this is another pretty important turning point. This is about 5 or 6 years after that moment where I got high for the first time and really liked it. And I always assumed that when my mom or dad confronted me about my pot use or my drug use, or if they straight out asked me, have you been smoking pot? I would say, yes, I have. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And that's basically what I did. But it did not have the impact that I thought it would. Like, I sort of thought, in just being straightforward like that and honest, that I would like immediately stop using, basically, because I knew I was addicted. Like that is a thought I had
but
while I was smoking.
But when you said, yeah, I'm doing it and it's not a problem,
yeah,
it sounds like they didn't know you were addicted.
They had no idea. They thought I was just experimenting. It
was a phase or something, right?
It was a phase, yeah. And and what I resented most about the situation is they bought it. For when I look back, from my perspective, it is obvious. I had come home with stupid looking eyes and avoided you on multiple occasions. And even later out, I found out they found a bunch of seeds and stems from a sack that I sifted through it, but not actually thrown it out. I folded it up in some paper and put it in my desk somewhere, and they found that, and they thought it was drugs, but they didn't come and talk to me about it. But I remember that moment when it was my mom who she confronted me. I think I was high at the time, and it wasn't like, yeah, it's cool, there's no problem. I was angry at why didn't you know sooner? And that was something I wasn't prepared for at all. Because I had assumed they'll confront me, I'll be honest, we'll talk about it, and then I'll start getting my life back together, or it'll be easier to give up.
Did you expect them to offer some kind of help?
I don't know what I expected. I thought we'd actually be able to have a conversation about it, an honest conversation about it.
Right.
But I mean, like, well, I admitted to it. I was like, well, I'm just experimenting. It's not a big deal. Everything's fine. But you know,
I think part of our parents, you and I are close in age, and I think that our parents are close in age also. In fact, I know that. Part of their culture was to just not talk about uncomfortable or taboo things with their kids.
Yeah.
And I deliberately take a very different approach with mine.
Yeah, I've seen you do it.
Yeah, totally. So I want them to know all this stuff before.
Yeah. And I know at least about my dad. His dad, would just dominate everything. So so much so, but my dad could never think his own thought about whatever was going on. It's he told me when his dad talked to him about the birds and the bees, he actually talked to him about the birds and the bees. That's not a euphemism. He actually explained birds do it this way, bees do it that way. Not to get too off topic here, but he sat him down and cornered my dad for 4 hours explaining all the different ways. So it makes sense that my dad swung the other direction and didn't talk to me about anything. He's just I don't want to do what my dad did.
So I'm going to do the opposite.
I'm going to do the opposite. Right. So when I have children, I'm definitely aiming for the middle of the road on that. Because your kids are going to make their own decisions, but they're going to be looking to you for guidance. Even if they hate the guidance you give them, they're going to be looking to you for guidance. Yeah. And then that was, I thought I'd be able to look to my parents for guidance on the issue, and they would provide me some, and then they bought all my bullshit, and okay, I guess it's okay. He can go get high. He can go run out. He can go run out with his friends. We won't ground him. We won't watch him more closely. We won't talk with him about this. We'll just accept what he said, and then we'll get on, and everything will be okay. And that felt like a betrayal to me. That was well, don't you care about me?
Yeah, well,
don't you love me?
Right.
Why are you just allowing me to go on this way? And so from that moment on, that confrontation with my mom and then my dad later on, smoking pot was never fun after that. It was I would go out with friends, I would get high, and something was different. I would smoke and I would feel the effects, but it was no longer enjoyable. Something was just, it just overnight. But at this stopped working for me. Mm-hmm.
But at this point, so you said you were addicted. So when I was officially "quote unquote" addicted to whatever, I at that point I needed it to feel normal. Mm-hmm. So were you at that point yet, or no?
It was just different. It was night and day. It had become something that was really important to me. It was fun, part of my life. It was something I felt I couldn't do anymore, but I was still doing, and I didn't enjoy. And I wasn't ready or prepared for that at all. And so, and plus layer on that, this sort of feeling of betrayal from my parents' failure to intervene or, properly confront me, talk to be available, whatever.
Sure.
The sense of betrayal I had, I started getting it in my head. Okay, well, what do I have to do in order to get them to notice that this is something that I'm doing all the time and that it's a problem?
Hookers and cocaine, bro.
Hookers and cocaine. I wish I would have done those because that probably would have been better than what I decided to do.
Too bad we didn't know each other back then.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have. Honestly, you wouldn't have wanted me around. Nobody did. Because after that confrontation and the next 6 months of my life was just one day after the next was just worse. It was just worse and worse and worse. I started getting really antisocial, really bizarre behaviors at home, smashing stuff during the day, wait my parents come home, just look at them what, do something. Yelling, screaming at my parents, not talking to anybody at school, really.
Was there any cross addiction going on at this time, or was it all just weed?
Just weed, man. And I've talked about this. I think there is this little subset of people that if you have sort of a tendency toward anxiety disorders or bipolar disorder or some sort of psychotic disorder, and you get busy smoking weed, it can really exacerbate what may have been a latent tendency can become a full-blown, fully expressed thing.
They say all this stuff, and I don't know if it's true or not. I feel like a lot of the research that we have on weed is biased one way or the other. Uh-huh. But they do say that it affects the way that your brain develops when you're younger.
Yeah.
And that may be part of what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Because I had, there was, if your brain is wet clay, that first moment that I got high was like a big fucking handprint in the clay that's that's basically hardened that way.
Right.
And it's just part of who I am now.
So we were talking about that before we recorded. When I used to sell weed, like I had this kind of rule. Yeah, some people would come over and pick up weed, and I had this rule where like, okay, if you smoke like I smoke, you can come over and pick up weed. We can get high together. But I don't want you to bring anybody over who has never smoked before, or anybody who just smokes every once in a while, like some kind of newbie or inexperienced smoker. It has to be like something they do all the time. And the reason was I didn't want anyone to have any freakouts. In my house full of drugs.
See, and I think that's a very reasonable policy for a drug dealer to have. It's a strange thing to say, but the thing is, I was an experienced smoker, but I started I had moments at in groups of people where I'd have sort of freak out or like major lash out just because I went to, like I said, it stopped being fun. It stopped being something I felt like I could share with other people because my experience with pot had gone from this thing that we're all running around and doing in secret to this thing that I have to deal with and talk to my parents about also. And I couldn't square that circle. So I would go with people, get high, and then just get like socially catatonic and feel like I shouldn't be here. I can't say anything, and it would start to feel like everyone was laughing, like not all the laughing and talking that was going on in the room. So the people I was with, it started to feel like it was all about me, and then that would make me even more paranoid and more uncomfortable, and then it would become obvious that I was like the one person uncomfortable in the room, and then it would actually become about me, and I just it was several very like humiliating experiences. The second half of junior year. And then it just so I'd had one foot in each world, like one foot in the college track world and one foot in the sort of the druggies world. And then what progressively happened is I just got pulled apart until I wasn't in either one of these worlds. I had no sense of identity or purpose. I knew smoking pot wasn't working anymore. It didn't feel good. And I did it anymore. I wasn't having any fun anymore, but I kept trying to make it work.
Okay.
It was either because I'm either a drug addict or an idiot or some combination of the two. Right. Or I just didn't know any better. I was convinced I could make it work. And what eventually ended up happening is, I caused enough damage around the house and enough, bizarre situations to have my parents sort of start shopping me around to psychiatric hospitals and therapists and trying to get me on medicines. And eventually ended up dropping out of high school and going to like a sort of detention facility for about 50 days, and then taken to an emotional growth boarding school.
So was this the senior year at this point?
Yeah, my senior year. And so this was like the most unhappy. I wouldn't wish this experience on anybody. Because while my sort of college track friends were really getting their lives together and having their senior year and basically having a good time and moving on in a new direction.
Right.
Using high school as a stepping stone to go somewhere else more valuable. I was being buried by like self-pity and self-hatred because I was away at these facilities, and then I was finishing, I'd gone from honors classes, AP classes, to lessons by correspondence just so I could get a high school equivalency. And I was living in this house where we had to do like therapy groups twice a day. Yeah.
Was the academic thing like your main yardstick for self-worth, do you think?
It was definitely one of them, because that's the one thing I got from my parents that I knew was important. Like, education matters to them. And that was definitely a lot of my self-worth came from being
that must have been
good at school.
So that must have been devastating when all that started to go to hell in a handbasket.
It was just... It's shocking I never killed myself. It is, and as I look back on it, it's absolutely... I think I was probably too much of a coward to do it, but it's shocking I never killed myself.
I'm glad you were too much of a coward.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a strange thing. Bill Wilson talks about that in the Big Book, where he talks about thinking about suicide, being too afraid to go through with it,
Yeah, but I'm glad that you were too afraid.
Yeah, me too. Me too, very much so. But I was so miserable, and what do miserable people do? They inflict their misery on others, or they look to other people to pull them out of their misery, because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have the skills. And
Sure.
then this is emotional growth boarding school. They're trying to teach me the skills, I suppose, but it was not a real great environment. The lead counselor had a little bit of a boundary issue, I would say, which never really got full force toward me, but in hindsight, and after hanging out with some people from that school a few years later and comparing notes, it was a good thing that I didn't stay there any longer than I had to. I ended up getting a high school equivalency, but then moving back in with my parents. So when I'm 18, turning 19, I'm finishing high school at the same time as everybody else for my graduating class, but I haven't done any of the legwork to go off to college. Don't want to go to college. I ended up moving back in with my parents and working at HEB as a grocery sacker and eventually a cashier, and going to AA meetings and 12-step meetings, not because I wanted to necessarily, but because some of the adults in my life were saying that I should, and I didn't have any other options. There was nobody else I could talk to. I didn't want anything to do. Nobody wanted anything to do with me. Was really the thing. Because the friends that I had with the sort of the college track friends, I basically betrayed them. I ceased to offer them friendship so that I could run around and get high. And then the people that weren't on the college track, the drugging friends, there was a little crossover between those groups, but they were mostly different. They didn't really want anything to do with me because I had become so unfun to get high with because of all this sort of psychological problems that were coming to the surface for me.
Right, you could almost, I would imagine they probably felt like I felt with the whole,
yes,
he's going to get us in trouble type thing.
Yeah, if I hung out with somebody and got high with them, I got blacklisted, pretty much, and rightly so.
Blacklisted.
My smoking pass was revoked. But so while I was at this facility, I was technically sober. I wasn't smoking any weed, and I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
I don't know if MMA was even a thing back then.
Yeah, I encountered MA a little bit later on, and it was actually really helpful, but then it never went regularly, and I think the group kind of fell apart.
For those of you guys listening, that's actually where Paul and I met one another.
Yeah.
Was an MA meeting.
That is where this story is leading, to that MA meeting.
Sorry.
No, it's because what happened is, I managed to stay sober, but I stayed incredibly unhappy. So while my friends, my college track friends, were going to college, in their freshman year of college, I was living with my parents, bagging groceries, not getting high. I was going to AA meetings because no one else would have me around, essentially. I had a sponsor I would talk to. I was heavily addicted to internet pornography because I had to do something to deal with all the self-hatred. I had to find pleasure somewhere,
Right.
And then eventually my dad got real insistent about me getting out of the house and going to college. So I did, but now I'm a year behind and I have zero social skills, essentially. And then I'm afraid to talk to people because I don't know, am I going to start having psychotic episodes again in public? I don't know how to make connections anymore. So while I ended up going to college, it was the wrong medicine for the problem. And then speaking of medicine, I was going to psychiatrists, I was on bipolar meds and antipsychotics and Prozac, and there was this constant churn of what meds do we have to put him on to level him out enough so he can go to school.
That game sucks,
dude.
Man. That game sucks. I've played it before. Okay?
So I did a couple years of college like that, where I kind of made some friends, sort of, but I was a very troubled person while I was there, and I wasn't, something of a social pariah, I think, for a lot of people. So very troubled, and because miserable people take their misery out on others one way or another. Mm-hmm. I was going to AA meetings, and I was trying to talk that talk and do that walk, and I kind of knew some people there. Go to class and take these meds, but very socially isolated and very unhappy. And that went on for about 2 years until my 21st birthday, where I was in an AA meeting And I shared, I said something about how I wasn't expecting to spend my 21st birthday at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but here I am, like the whole room laughed at that. That was the funniest thing. It's great. I'm glad I got to, share how to create that moment, but I was serious. I don't want to be here sharing with you old fuckers. I'm 21. I should be downtown with my friends partying.
Right.
But either I can't do that or I'm afraid to do that because of my history from high school. So when I went back to college I'm a summer birthday, so when I went back the following fall, I threw all my meds in the garbage and hardly went to class. The only two people I really talked to were my AA sponsor near the college and the school counselor. And there was this girl that kind of I guess her heart hurt for me. She thought she could fix me. She was always trying to wiggle her way into my life. We shouldn't make any. I feel so sorry for her, because one thing I really needed the love and attention because I couldn't get it anywhere. But it was from you. I want it from you. Really mistreated her. I had a few friends but it was just a miserable time. And when you stop taking psychotropics, the SRIs and all that, SSRIs, cold turkey, wouldn't sleep, night sweats, shaking. It was a brutal time.
And it can vary. I remember one time the psychiatrist told me, don't just stop.
It can be fatal. I wasn't willing to talk to my psychiatrist because it became so clear to me that I could just say anything and he would give me pills. Wow. Didn't matter what. 15 minutes, 1-page survey. Yep, sounds like you need this med. Later on you learn it's because the pharmaceutical companies are paying him to prescribe the drugs. And not to say there aren't good psychiatrists out there, and some people need meds, but I couldn't feel a goddamn thing.
Right.
I was just numbed out, and I knew it. And in my mind, the reason I was so unhappy all the time is because I hadn't dealt with or understood all of the difficulties I created for myself back, in 17. It was a really rough semester, and I didn't finish. What ended up happening is I told the school counselor that I was probably going to kill myself if I went back to my apartment, and just broke down into tears. And he was like, I can't let you.
So is this still 21, 22?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is not long after my 21st birthday, coming up on Christmas again, Thanksgiving. I was dying. And by the end of the day, my parents were at the university and came and drove me home. And actually, that was sort of the beginning of the switch.
Hey guys, this is Louie. So, Paul's story ended up running about an hour and 10 minutes. So, similar to my story, I'm going to cut it into two parts, part 1 and part 2. What we'll do is this, we'll pick back up where Paul talks about that was the beginning of the switch. We'll pick back up there next week. So, please tune back in for the exciting conclusion. For those of you who are listening on iTunes, please scroll down to the ratings and review section. Provide a rating, provide a review. Also, feel free to share this with others. It's almost a form of doing service. You never know when it's going to come in handy to share something with somebody else. Additionally, give me some feedback on this. When I'm listening to audio or to podcasts, I prefer them to be 20 or 30 minutes long. I know some folks do hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long recordings. But I find that when a recording is that long, I have to go back to it and listen to it in several sittings. So I prefer 20 or 30 minutes because then I can listen to it while I'm commuting or, if I'm out running errands between a couple of locations or whatever. Let me know your thoughts on that. I can be reached at my email, selfinflictedrrl at gmail.com. Other than that, I appreciate everybody listening, and I wish you all the best. Have a great evening.